Guys, come with me to take down the Star Wars franchise as I attempt to rank all 11 live-action Star Wars films. What's going on, guys? I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. For those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Ty, and today in this video, as you can see on screen here, I'm going to be attempting to rank all 11 live-action Star Wars films. The only movie that I'm not including in this list is the Clone Wars animated film because, first of all, I've never seen it. Second of all, I've never seen the show before. And third of all, I don't think anyone really cares about that movie. Just to give you guys my perspective on Star Wars before I get into this list and start ranking things specifically, I am definitely a big Star Wars fan. I love the franchise as a whole, but I wouldn't consider myself like a diehard fan. I don't know every little thing. I haven't seen like the Clone Wars show. I don't know all the names of every single little intricate character, things like that. But overall, I still do really enjoy Star Wars. I get excited for it, and I love it. I love Star Wars. All right, I don't want to waste any more time though. Let's just get right into this list. We're going to go in chronological order here, starting with A New Hope. Let me know your ranking of these movies down in the comments below. See, the thing is, I'm looking at all these movies already, and I already know that people are going to be mad at my takes because obviously there's the ongoing joke that nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. So I feel like Star Wars does get like the most heated between fans, but A New Hope, I don't even have to think about it. This is peak Star Wars. It would be disrespectful of me to put this anywhere else. Is it the best Star Wars movie? I don't know. We'll see in a minute. But this movie, what it did for movies as a whole, what it did for cinema, what George Lucas was able to achieve by bringing these beautiful characters, this beautiful story, this beautiful world to us, one that we all love, one that we all cherish, one that we share with our friends and families. It's just truly amazing. I love everything in here. The way that, first of all, it's a great movie on its own, but second of all, the way it sets things up. Obi-Wan's little, mention of the Clone Wars, things like that. Those things that kind of moved Star Wars forward, I love. Darth Vader being in here, the, Death Star being introduced. All these at the time were such unique concepts. And of course, you see George Lucas's influences in this from whether it's Kurosawa or things like that. And how could I not talk about, of course, the beautiful shot of Luke standing in front of the twin suns, I want to say it's called. Sorry, again, I don't know every single little name, but that's like gotta be one of the most beautiful movie shots of all time. I adore this movie. It's beautiful. It introduces us to our characters in such a wonderful fashion. It's going right up here towards the top of peak Star Wars. Moving on to one of the greatest sequels of all time, Empire Strikes Back. Guys, I don't mean to spoil things here pretty early on, but both of these movies are top 2 for me. And the thing is, I always go back and forth with, well, if I can move it, which one I actually think is better. I think right now I'm gonna go with Empire being the best Star Wars movie. I don't think that's like a hot take by any means. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but the things that this sequel does, the way that this was almost our original Infinity War, where our heroes really come out of this losing. It's tragic. The classic moment, I am your father, unbelievable. There's so many good things in here. I love the whole Cloud City sequence. Lando is actually one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Random, but I mean, I feel like that's what makes Star Wars so fun, is that people have like, different things that they specifically really love. The whole Hoth intro sequence, how could I not talk about that? And just all these quippy one-liners from Han Solo. We see our characters, now that they've kind of been through some things together after that first movie, we kind of have them going through stuff again. So since they've been already established, we kind of just get to see them hanging out, being together. I really like that. The only critique I have of this movie, and the only reason why I would maybe put it behind A New Hope, is because I feel like the whole storyline in the second act with Leia, Han, and I believe Chewie is with them, I feel like it gets a little, I don't want to say boring, but it just feels like there isn't too much going on. But I don't want to like harp on that for too long. It's like the smallest complaint in the world because this is a banger movie. Like, it's the best Star Wars movie and I love it. It's awesome. God, Darth Vader is just so menacing and cool in this. I love this film. It feels weird to say this about an original trilogy movie, but I feel like in a way, Return of the Jedi is pretty underrated. I feel like people always talk about A New Hope and Empire, but Return of the Jedi, the finale to the trilogy, never really gets talked about. Don't get me wrong, I think it's the worst of the 3, but in my opinion, this is peak Star Wars, guys. This movie is so underrated, like I said already, and I know, yeah, it gets talked about, but in comparison to those first 2, not as much. Where do I even get started here? First of all, I feel like one of the main critiques about this movie is the whole Endor stuff with the Ewoks. I actually am a huge fan of the Ewok stuff. I think it's so, fun, and it just brings a different energy and something we haven't really seen to the Star Wars franchise as a whole, and I think that's really cool. And just overall, just the energy of this movie, the fact that it's our finale, seeing Darth Vader throw the Emperor, the final fight, so sick. And of course, how can you not talk about just all of our great characters having such a wonderful ending and seeing Anakin's Force Ghost standing there, the updated version as well, where it's like, you know, Hayden Christensen. So awesome. This movie is peak Star Wars. This is a really great film. If you haven't seen it in a while, watch it again, go into it a little bit more open-minded, and I promise you're gonna have better thoughts about the movie after watching it. Okay, so basically, now that I got my least controversial takes over with, I mean, I think everyone could kind of agree with this, we get into the back 9 or back 8 movies here that everyone has completely different opinions on, whether it's the prequels, the sequels, or even the standalones, you know? So let's just dive right into Phantom Menace. See, the thing is, I'm going to be honest with you, this might kind of surprise some of you because I know I really do love movies, but I actually didn't really grow up watching Star Wars. Like, I grew up more on like Pixar and Disney, things like that. So I didn't really have too much nostalgia for the prequels like most people my age or a little bit older do. I'm like 21, I was born in 2002. But I still really do enjoy these movies because they just remind me of that era of the movies that came out when I was, you know, a child. And The Phantom Menace is one of those movies where, honestly, it's just I don't think there's anything really too great about it. It's kind of long. I feel like people hate on like Annie and, you know, our little baby Anakin Skywalker here. I don't think he's really that bad. People kind of drag it. There's cool moments in here, like, you know, that final fight with Darth Maul with Duel of Fates. But I feel like there's other stuff that just drags it down. Again, the story in here is just kind of dragged out. It gets a little bit boring with all the political stuff. And yeah, it's cool to see all the Padme stuff, her dealing with her planet and all that. But overall, I don't really care about the politics of Naboo. And just, it is Naboo, right? Is that the planet that she's from? Hopefully I'm not saying that wrong. But yeah, just overall, not the most interesting Star Wars movie to me. Again, I would rather this movie exist than not exist. I would always go back to watch this movie and have a decent time. The pod racing scene's really cool, but there's just some stuff in here where it's like, okay, whatever. And of course, this movie introduced Jar Jar Binks and basically has like the most of him. So yeah, this movie, it's just enemy. I think it is one of the worst Star Wars movies. Okay, so getting into the movie that a lot of people I feel like would deem one of the worst Star Wars movies, Attack of the Clones. I watched this film fully, you know, I've seen bits and pieces, but only like 2 months ago, if I'm going to be honest with you. And I've got to say one thing. I actually had a pretty good time with this movie. I'm putting it above Phantom Menace. I don't really know if that's a hot take. I feel like the thing is, with Phantom Menace, a lot of people just look at that ending. They're like, oh, Duel of Fates, Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan. But the actual story in Attack of the Clones overall, I feel like is way more interesting. I love all this spy espionage stuff about who's trying to kill Padme. And one of my favorite just storylines in this movie that's so awesome to me is the whole Obi-Wan, like, again, like I was saying, spy thing about him trying to figure out who's gonna kill Padme or who's trying to kill Padme. And he's just on like this lone adventure. He goes to Kamino, which I think is one of the coolest looking planets, where he fights Jango Fett. So awesome. I really enjoy it. And then of course the battle of, I want to say Geonosis. I don't really know how to say it fully, but it's a pretty like decent final act, whatever. Christopher Lee's Count Dooku, awesome. I think he's pretty underrated. And I think that fight with Yoda is actually also pretty underrated. I get that, you know, the CGI isn't exactly up to date like with, you know, some of the newer films, but at the same time, this is also our first experience, I don't know how I can forget to say this, with Hayden Christensen and Obi-Wan, one of, you know, all Star Wars fans' favorite duos. In Phantom Menace, he was just a kid. He was, I don't want to say annoying. I actually kind of like younger Anakin, especially when he hits his yippee. But I just enjoy the chemistry between Hayden Christensen and Obi-Wan, and you start to see little hints of that tension, that kind of, you know, thing that led him to be pushed to the dark side, and I really appreciate that. And you get to see Anakin be with Padme when they're both adults, so it's not as weird. I feel like out of all the movies so far, I've said the most about Attack of the Clones, which is kind of weird, but I feel like that's just because these are some more controversial movies, so there is kind of like more to say. I know that I just said the first 2 prequel films are just like Star Wars movies. I do enjoy them, but you know, I don't really love them that much. But in my opinion, these 2 movies sacrificed setting up this masterpiece of a third film, that being Revenge of the Sith. And in my opinion, it's the 3rd best Star Wars movie, at least as of right now on this list. Guys, what do I mean by that? I feel like these 2 films, the storylines are a little bit boring, there isn't too much going on, but they were just meant to set up this film, set up the tension with Padme, Obi-Wan, and Hayden, and how he feels like he could do greater things, but, you know, Obi-Wan's like, no, you have to chill out, you know what I mean? This movie feels like just a sequence of cool scene after cool scene after cool scene stitched together. And I know that you might say, oh, isn't that just every good movie? No, because I feel like these are super memorable scenes. The Grievous fight, the Mace Windu scene, of course, the Order 66 stuff. We've got all this cool stuff coming together. And how can I not talk about the peak lightsaber battle that is the one on Mustafar between Obi-Wan and Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker. Guys, this film, I'm going to be honest with you, okay, because I know that I'm, kind of talking crazy here. This movie I only watched for the first time, again, fully, about a month and a half ago after I watched Attack of the Clones. I know that's kind of wild. I didn't really grow up on Star Wars. The thing with this final battle that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about is that, yeah, sure, it's a cool fight, but the thing that makes the fight so cool is that there's an emotional connection there. These were brothers. These were two people, a master and a Padawan, that were together, and now they're fighting to the death, and the master has to end up taking out, essentially, the Padawan. That's so sad. I loved their chemistry. I loved them together. And to see the way that their arc ended, especially with Padme dying, it's a shame, man. And I really, really thoroughly enjoy watching this film. I cannot wait to revisit it because, wow, it's a beautiful science fiction movie. Let's go. I finally get to talk about Disney Star Wars. Next up, we've got The Force Awakens. So, we're getting into some controversial territory here, obviously. People have such varying opinions on some of these films, especially one right here in particular. We'll get to that in a second. But The Force Awakens, believe it or not, one of my favorite movies, gonna be honest with you. But I don't think it's peak Star Wars, if that makes sense. I just really enjoy this movie. So, The Force Awakens, I think, is a great Star Wars film. It's one of the better Star Wars films. It set up the trilogy nicely. Where the trilogy went, that's a different story. First of all, it follows in the footsteps of A New Hope, and I know people complain about that, and I 100% get it, and I know that there's some stupid stuff in here, but at the same time, A New Hope was a good movie, so if you kind of copy the good movie, you're probably going to end up having a pretty good movie. And the second thing is Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is one of my favorite villains of all time. I love Adam Driver. He's a phenomenal actor. Kylo Ren's just so cool to me. I love him. I love the scene in here where he kills Han Solo. I know that some people don't really like that, or honestly, I don't know. I feel like it's more just controversial whether people like it or don't like it. Regardless, I think it's a cool movie. I feel like it's nice to actually see modern CGI on Star Wars as well. Think about it. All these other Star Wars films, they're pretty old if we're just being real, and the CGI isn't that great, so to see one with really good visuals for the first time, basically, awesome. And I do think that the story is pretty good in here. We have some cool sequences and stuff, but I don't know, man, just something about it, something about this movie, you just gotta love it. As much as I do love The Force Awakens, and I know, it's an episode, it's episode 7, I think that Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, is one of the better Star Wars movies, and I think it's better than A Force Awakens. This is such a great Star Wars film. First of all, just based on its premise as a whole, phenomenal. The fact that we're just talking about this little thing in Star Wars, the thing that we saw like 50 years ago about the Death Star plans. How did they get to Leia on that ship in the first place in the beginning of A New Hope? That's what this whole movie's about. And it's such a small thing that was managed to be blown up into this huge movie where the second half is this huge war, and you see all the sacrifice and all the amazing things that went into getting these plans. We have Diego Luna in here as Cassian Andor. We have Felicity Jones as Jyn Erso. That's how you say her name, right? I really, really like this movie. I feel like one of the main complaints is that there aren't too many good characters in here. I completely disagree. Donnie Yen's Jedi, the scene where he's like, I'm one with the Force is with me. Fire, absolutely amazing. This is proof that you don't need lightsabers all the time to have a great Star Wars story and have it still, surrounded by the Force and just that nature, the themes of Star Wars. The second half of this movie is literally like an endgame level final act. It's awesome. It's beautiful. I love all the stuff going on in the beginning too. We have some cool set pieces there. And the real star of the show here has got to be Gareth Edwards, the director. See, the thing is, Gareth Edwards, I feel like he does visuals right. He does, shots right. He does everything, how everything looks, set design right. But the problem with his movies sometimes can be the scripts. Godzilla, the creator, I feel like both of those movies look beautiful, but they weren't written properly. This movie had a good script, in my opinion. It had a good premise, good direction. So he was able to elevate it with his own flair and make it awesome. So shout out to him. I really enjoy his movies. This is a great Star Wars movie. All right, guys, it's time to talk about The Last Jedi, a movie that people either love or that people either absolutely hate. I understand where people are coming from on both sides. In my opinion, and not that this really is an opinion of mine about the film, this is the most controversial movie of all time, I'd argue. This and Man of Steel together are the most controversial films of all time when it comes to audiences being split on whether they're good or bad. In my opinion, this is going in eh. I am not necessarily the biggest fan of The Last Jedi. I put it here towards the top of eh. I think it's pretty good. It has cool moments, but there's just stuff in here that breaks the canon, whether it's the Holdo maneuver. There's just a lot of things in here that I'm just not a big fan of. All the Luke Skywalker stuff, I'm kind of indifferent on to an extent, because again, I'm not like a diehard Star Wars fan, so I don't have like a strong opinion, but I don't love it. I think it's kind of cool. That's why I, again, have it towards the top of eh. I think it's just like, yeah, I can enjoy this movie and have a fun time. So even though there are a lot of dumb things in this movie, in my opinion, the Canto Bight stuff, I actually do like how Canto Bight looks, but the storyline there is kind of weird. I like how the premise of this movie is kind of different, how we just have one ship for most of the film just being tracked, by a Star Destroyer or just by, the Empire. That's cool. But overall, it just, I don't know. Again, I'm kind of indifferent. The one thing I've got to say, though, is that for all the bad things in this film, it's enjoyable. I can watch it anytime. It's very rewatchable. It has Kylo Ren. The final battle is sort of cool. But again, I'm almost indifferent on this movie in a way, which I know makes it a little bit more of a boring take. But yeah, that's just my honest opinion. Maybe I am just insane. But Solo, A Star Wars Story, is actually a great Star Wars film. Now, hold on. I've got to say one thing, because I might be a little bit biased about this film for one reason. That reason is that I actually watched this movie for the first time last night, okay? Listen, I'm just going to be real with you. I actually have finally seen every single Star Wars movie as of literally like 14 or 15 hours ago, okay? Just going to be real. But this movie completely surprised me. I was going into it like, oh, I just have to watch it so that I could say I've seen every Star Wars movie, and that I could say, my opinions on this film so that I don't have to leave one out. And I was utterly surprised. The cast here is so great. Having Childish Gambino come in here and play Lando, that was such a unique casting. I really enjoy that. I hope that his movie or show gets greenlit. I know they said they were kind of like writing it or whatever. I love the guy that plays Han Solo, Aldrin something, I forgot his last name. He was in Oppenheimer and Cocaine Bear. And of course, you've got Emilia Clarke in here doing her thing. Also, I was not aware that both Woody Harrelson and Paul Bettany are in Star Wars. Literally did not even know that until this movie. And I claim to know a lot about movies, but I don't know, that completely surprised me. But the story here, straight up, it's just fun. I had such a blast with this movie. This reminds me of Revenge of the Sith in the sense that there are so many good scenes back to back to back to back that are just stitched together, and it's so cool for that reason. It's very funny too, I've got to say. The scene where, Han meets Chewbacca and then he speaks in his language to get away from him, hysterical. I really enjoyed my watch of this movie. And again, I might be a little biased because I literally watched it last night. And just like that, we are down to episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. Guys, in case you can't tell from looking at my tier list, there's one tier, believe it or not, that is actually empty. I don't know if you guys could tell from my screen here. Rise of Skywalker is garbage. I'm going to be respectful to all my other fans. I'm going to pump my fist. I salute you. Disney, you guys got to change shit up here, because I'm so sick of just like this mediocrity, just this zero plan, zero development. Everyone knows that they made this trilogy, the sequel trilogy, with no plan. They made the first movie, then they were like, what can we do with the second movie? What can we do with the third movie? They had Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams kind of, floating around. Kathleen Kennedy was, trying to control everything. Things did not go that well. And this movie completely proves it. Retconning Palpatine, somehow Palpatine returned. They fly now. Man, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? For some reason, Kylo Ren kisses Rey for no reason at the end of this movie. What are we doing here, guys? This is a garbage movie. Like, I don't even have that much to say because everything's been said over thousands of video essays on YouTube, a billion, reviews from fans. I'm almost at a loss for words. I don't have much to say about this movie. It's garbage. It sucks. It's a disgrace to Star Wars. But the one thing I will say is that it looks visually stunning because, they put a quadrillion dollars into it. And also, maybe there's a scene here or two that's cool, but just the amount of plot conveniences in here, so stupid. But again, just like The Last Jedi, it's a movie that I can watch and I can enjoy watching it, even though I'll be frustrated with it because it's a Star Wars film, and at the end of the day, I just love Star Wars. But yeah, guys, that's gonna just about do it for this video today. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think about my ranking? But more importantly, I want to hear your ranking, your thoughts just in general about Star Wars. I would love to talk Star Wars with you guys down below. And also, if you guys want to consider subscribing, I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and I just want to hit it so bad. I don't know what it is, something about that 1000. I'm just dying to hit, to be completely honest with you. But guys, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.